Thank you very much. I was asked to give a toast, which of course precedes a roast. And as the person who got involved in this whole matter of the Scottish studies, right at the beginning, I was first of all summoned to meet with the representatives of the University of Toronto and McMaster, who told me that in the new department at Guelph we could not have any graduate work. And we had a long argument. I'm basically a McGregor, so I put up a fight. And finally they said to me, well, if you can get a field in which we're not doing anything, we won't object. And I said to myself, I've got you, boys. And so we introduced the Scottish studies. And fortunately, at this point, the chairman of practically every department in the faculty had a Scottish name and a Scottish connection. The principal of the university was McLaughlin. The Dean of Arts was McKinnon, and it went on McIntyre, Ross, Bruce, and a whole lot of them. And consequently, I had, in fact, sometimes in an argument in the faculty meeting, somebody get up and say, I see the Scottish Mafia is at it again. And so the Scottish studies developed. Fortunately, we had the support of the MacDonald Stewart Foundation, who kicked through in about 13, 14 years with over $400,000 for us to buy books and documents in Scotland. In fact, I'm still, I think, a bit unpopular in certain circles in Scotland, particularly at the University of Aberdeen, where they expect everything to be given to them, and we bought a lot of the documents they were looking for. And so when I was about to retire, I wondered if the Scottish tradition would carry on. I was sort of wondering about this because I've seen things change in various places when somebody has got something going and then he gets out and the interest in that particular topic or that particular subject falls away and the whole thing is forgotten. I've seen 2 or 3 bad examples of that. And I was wondering what would happen here at Guelph and if the Scottish tradition would die out. Well, then we heard about Ted and decided that we would see if he would come over. And so I left in 78 and he arrived in 79 and took over, and he has carried on the work, developed it, expanded it, and made it much more effective than it was even with the efforts that I put into it. I don't know if he got any more money than I did.
No chance.
But it has gone ahead, and in fact, at the present time, one of the major reputations of the University of Guelph is the Scottish studies. I was out in Australia a number of years in the early 80s, and I was very interested to find that if one thing they knew about the University of Guelph, it was Scottish studies. I remember repeatedly people asking me, well, where do you come from? Where were you teaching? And I'd say, at the University of Guelph. And I remember one man looked at me and said, man, he said, you don't mean to say that? And I said, yes. Well, he said, that's where they have the Scottish studies. And I said, I know. And so there's quite a reputation, and they even know about it in places like Holland, and in Scotland, of course. Yeah. Well, you mentioned Aberdeen again. I'll just tell you one story of Aberdeen. There was a fellow who came from Stonehaven, that's just south of Aberdeen, and he had a large collection of business documents relating mainly to Stonehaven and Aberdeen, about 13,000 documents. dating from about 1720 to 1880, I think it was. And he offered them for sale to the University of Aberdeen twice. And each time Aberdeen turned him down. They figured he'd have to give it to them. And so then he wrote to the archives in Ottawa, because there was a bit of stuff referring to Kingston, Ontario. He wrote to the archives in Ottawa and asked them if they'd be interested. Well, they examined his list, and the committee decided no, they wouldn't be. There wasn't enough Canadiana. And so, but sitting on that committee was a cousin of mine who had taken her MA in Scottish history with me at McGill University. And when they said no, she said, well, then why don't you send this letter to my cousin at the University of Guelph, which they did. So I wrote the guy and I said, what do you want for them? And he said, £10,000. At that point, the pound was $2.50. So I went to my friend David Stewart of the MacDonald Stewart Foundation and asked them for $25,000, which they kicked through with. But in the meantime, the pound had dropped to $2.30. So I paid him in pounds. And I had a letter about a month later from a minister at Musselburgh, just outside of Edinburgh, saying he'd come across a collection of documents relating to the Scottish Reformation. Would we be interested? And I wrote back and said, how much? And he wrote back and said, $2,000. So I got him. So I'm here primarily tonight in the way of a Toastmaster to ask you to toast Ted. I hope he doesn't feel the heat too much. And we wish him all the best as he goes back to Glasgow. I'm sorry for him, because I think he'll miss a lot of the freedom of Guelph, having had a little experience with the birds at Glasgow. And I hope and pray that he will do very well and behave himself. Man, it'll be really grand for him, you know. But then he'll wish that he were back in Canada.
Thank you. You're welcome. You and I.